All right, we're talking on the introduction to physiology. Let's get right into it. What is physiology? In simple terms, physiology is how the body works, right? And physiology is the scientific study of body function. It explains how living organisms survive and maintain life. So as I said, it's how the body works. It focuses on the functions of the body. For example, you have breathing, circulation, digestion, and movement. How do these things happen? You know, what happens when you take a breath? How is food digested? So this physiology answers all these questions. Right. Now, what is the relationship between anatomy and physiology? Now, anatomy studies body structure, while physiology studies body function. That is very, very important. You know, for example, you have the lung, you have an organ in the body called the alveoli, and this is where exchange takes place. Now, anatomy is going to tell you that it is a thin structure. Now, it is physiology that is going to explain to you that this structure allows for efficient gas exchange. All right. So that's the relationship between anatomy and physiology. Anatomy talks about the structure, physiology talks about the function. Now we have the levels of organization. You have the chemical level, where you have water, molecules, atoms, right? Electrolytes. And then you have the cellular level. And you have millions of cells in the body, right? And then we have tissue. Take note that tissue is a collection of cells. Then we have organ. Organ is a collection of tissues. And then system is a collection of organs. And then an organism is a collection of systems. I said that again. Tissue is a collection of cells. Organ is a collection of tissues. System is a collection of organs. And then organism is a collection of systems. Now, what are the characteristics of living organisms? We have that living organisms, we move, we respire, breathe, grow, reproduce, we excrete waste, we respond to stimuli, and we carry out metabolism. Now, in metabolism, we have catabolism and anabolism. Catabolism has to do with the breaking down processes like digestion. Anabolism has to do with the building up processes like growth. All right. So, metabolism is a combination of the breaking down processes and the building up processes. Take note of that. We have homeostasis, right? It means maintaining a stable internal environment. There is a normal internal environment that a normal person is supposed to have, right? And the body constantly makes sure that you are in that stable form. For example, the body temperature is about 36.5 to 37, right? So anything below that or anything higher than that range, the body will try to bring you back to this stable internal environment. Blood pressure is supposed to be 120/80. If your blood pressure is too high or it is too low, the body works to make sure it maintains that value. I'm telling you. The same goes with blood glucose, fluid balance, homeostasis. It's very essential for life because it's what really keeps us in check and keeps us balanced. Now we have homeostatic components of homeostatic control. We have receptors, the control center, and the effector. Now the receptor detects changes in the environment. Now the control center, which is most times it is the central nervous system, right? And then it processes the information. Then we have the effector, which when it's done processing, it produces response. I give you a very simple example. You put your hand on a hot object. Now your skin detects the the change or detect that stimuli, right? You have receptors all over your skin, and then it sends it to the brain, and now the brain will now send a response. The same goes with the fight and flight. Fight and flight is just a scenario where you're tense and then you run, right? Under certain conditions, I'm just trying to make it as easy as I can, right? You have fight or flight, right? It follows this same, it uses this same mechanism. So, for example, you see a lion. There are receptors in your eye which sends the information to your brain, which is the control center. And then the effectors will now trigger the glands to produce hormones like the adrenaline, which is going to make you or put your body in a position to run. So these are the components of homeostatic control. Now we have feedback. We have the negative feedback and the positive feedback. This is very important. Now, if there are changes, the negative feedback will reverse the change. For example, if you have an increase in blood pressure or an increase in temperature, the negative feedback is going to return it back to normal. Meanwhile, in the positive feedback, if there is any change, the positive feedback will increase. It will increase that effect until the event is complete. An example is the temperature regulation for the negative feedback and the blood glucose. When your temperature is high, your body will work to make sure that it returns it back to the 36.5 to 7 range, to 37 range. The same goes with blood glucose control. Meanwhile, in positive feedback, instead of reversing it, it actually gives more effect to the stimulus. For example, during labor, when you're feeling contractions in the uterine wall, you have a positive feedback which will cause more contractions, which will aid the birthing of the baby. The same thing in blood clots. If there is, you have a wound, there will be more. It's going to send more of the clotting factors to that place to make sure that that wound is closed. So these are the differences between negative feedback. Negative feedback reverses the change back to normal. Meanwhile, positive feedback enhances the change. Now, what are the basic physiological needs that the body requires? You need oxygen, you need water, you need nutrients, you need a normal temperature and adequate pressure. Now, any deficiency in any of these will affect your body function. Now, what are the major systems in the body? This is very important. They are more than this, right? You have the nervous system that controls the body's activity, the cardiovascular system that when you hear the cardiovascular, it's literally the blood and the blood vessels. That's what we're talking about in cardiovascular system. And you have the respiratory system, and you have the respiratory system is responsible for breathing, and then you have the digestive system which breaks down food, and then the urinary system does the most waste. And as I said, these are not all. We still have more. We have the endocrine, which is the hormonal system. We have the skeletal system. We have the muscular system. Now, the application of physiology in clinical scenarios. For example, measuring blood pressure, oxygen therapy. You have to know how these different things work. This is where these are like applications of physiology, right? Monitoring blood glucose, managing fluid balance. So these are some of the applications of physiology in the clinical scenario. Now, what are the common terms in physiology? You have metabolism, which I explained earlier on, which I mentioned the catabolism and the anabolism. Then you have the stimulus. These are external factors, I would say external factors, or factors that that triggers a response. Any change that triggers a response is a stimulus. Now, what are responses? Obvious that these are reactions to stimulus, right? Then cell, which we all know is the basic unit of life, and then organs, which are structures for performing specific functions. Now, in summary, physiology studies body function, explains how systems work together, and homeostasis maintains an internal balance. And as we know, physiology is important in the nursing patient case. Thank you.